I am the great and powerful Xaid. Do you presume to criticize me? Wait, what are you doing? What are you doing?
No, no, don't do that. Pay no attention to the man behind the plastic shell. I've been meaning to increase the randomness of random review, and it didn't get more random than when we saw what the next Kamen Rider was going to be. This dumpy little thing that looks more at home at an amusement park than a battlefield. This is Level Up Rider number 1, Kamen Rider Xaid, the gimmick line of action figures for this year's Kamen Rider. Well, this year, a little bit of last year's, same time frame. So yeah, this is the gimmicky one. And this is a little bit strange of a figure. As you can see, mostly cast in a black plastic with a lot of white paint and a little bit of silver as well in order to give it the appropriate look. And yeah, it is level 1 Xaid, dumpy, plump, and generally not very threatening looking, which I guess makes sense at level 1. Looking at the head itself, definitely got the right look to it. The visor actually has a layered effect to it, so it does look like a proper game visor. Well, more like a dirt bike visor that they're going for in this, with those more anime-ish and cartoony eyes set in. So, yeah, the detail is accurate, and they made sure that it worked pretty well. In the chest, not so much. So there's this translucent piece on top of a big sticker that gets all the graphics in there. You can see his life bar, his weapon icons, and all that such. And then you have the actual face buttons, just like a controller. Except you also have these raised sections that you can see in the plastic. And it doesn't quite match up where they are. It's a little bit hard to get an angle where the buttons actually have the color they're supposed to have. It's a little bit weird and does not quite work, unfortunately. That's a minor flaw, I guess. On the belt, just like most of these gimmicky figures, there's a lot of detail that they just had to skip, so we end up with a very flat-looking version of the gamer driver in its closed mode. Now, it is, as a basic paint job goes, it does get everything across. You have the pink in the handle, which is correct, and then all the green, so there's not a whole lot I can complain about. Moving on, silver, black, white, you get the idea. So, what can you do with this thing? Well, you do have actual fists that work and have slots for weapons, and he does come with 2. Here we'll show you the standard, the Gashikon Breaker. I'm not sure why they went with pink for the plastic. I understand there's also already a lot of white on the toy, but white is the primary color of the weapon. They really only use the pink for like highlight details. So that's a little bit strange. Does have a nice molding to it though. A, B buttons, all the ridges are there. Even has that big slot for gashats. Even though you can't use gashats with this series in either, you can't, like, the gashats in here don't come out. That's what I mean. So at least you do have a decent weapon, even if it is a strange color. And beyond that, not a whole lot. The wrists rotate, which is something. And then the shoulders are ball jointed, but ball jointed in a very weird way. The cut is long here, which means you don't get a whole lot of range of motion. And most of the time, you just see the front, or you see the top of his shoulder as if it's the front, just because that's the way the ball joint sits. So he really only gets this kind of weird side-to-side motion. We represent the Lollipop Guild, Lollipop. I don't know why Wizard of Oz is on my mind today, but it just is. So, not a whole lot of action feature here to speak of. I'm going to go ahead and take the breaker out. And if we reverse around, we find, yes, there is a little Xaid sitting inside the big Xaid. So, this is the gimmick. He's basically a pretender transformer hiding away in his own personal shell. So, we'll go ahead and get him to level 2, which involves unplugging him from the shell itself. We'll go ahead and slide the backpack down into place. That hides that little slot there. Stretch out the arms. Yeah, you've been stuck in that shell a long time. Good to get a stretch in there. Rotate the legs around, rotate the feet around. Do that again. And you're basically done, except he's missing a little piece. Well, you also have to actually remove the chest piece, and then we can actually complete it. Have fingernails ready. That one is a little bit tough to get off. So, go ahead, plug that into the chest, and that gives us X8 at level 2. So I guess, at the very least, it's a very quick transformation from level 1 to level 2, at least as far as these lines go. That said, it does mean his gimmick is very, very simplistic. It doesn't have nearly the dynamic function and the cool effects of, say, like O's, double, Gaim, like even like Forze and Ghost had some really neat ones to play with. This, yeah, this does not do a whole lot for me. And we'll explain what that's for a little bit later. For now, let's focus on the actual figure. That's a more proper look at X8. That's about how we're familiar with him at this point. Spiky hair going up, visor on. Again, it's a layered effect, so it does look accurate to the show. He does have a lot of paint going on here. Now he's primarily in pink plastic, and then little green highlights all over, striping in black, and plenty of silver as well. Plenty going on here in detail, even though he is the simple figure. They've been doing better about these. That said, the belt is always going to be a shortcut. They're never really going to paint it up the way it needs to be painted. They did go the extra mile. It's hard to see, but the gamer driver logo is molded in. It's not painted, of course, because it's very complex. And yeah, they didn't paint the gashat because I guess they try to make it variable how these look. I really could have used a little bit of black paint there just to represent the window in the driver. That, I think, would have set it off a lot better. Along the side, you also have some blank black gashats in the holder, as if he does actually have them ready to go, ready to use. So the detailing is fairly nice for what is essentially the sub-figure art level of toy. And that's not generally a bad thing. This is pretty much what we have expected for years, ever since I think Decade really started doing these gimmicky figures as an action figure line. So let's see, we can go ahead and give him his weapon, which is the sword mode of the Gashikon Breaker, because we can't have a main rider without a sword weapon, now can we? Again, pink plastic, when really only this piece should be in pink, but whatever. It's mostly the same molding though, so you've seen it before, and it's still fairly nicely done. I'm sure a modder has done wonders on some of these accessories as far as paint goes. His hand has 2 hinges in it for 2 fingers each, and that will hold on to the sword rather loosely. It's one thing I don't like about these. You know, there's not a whole lot you can do with the hand articulation on these guys, so sometimes I just wish it would be a traditional slot or hole in the hand, just like a molded fist, to make it a little bit easier to handle these things and make their weapons a little bit more secure. But this is what they've been doing for a long, long time, and I don't foresee them changing it soon. But at the very least, in a static pose, you can see he holds onto the weapon well enough. Alright, so what about articulation? That's a good one to go to. Full ball joint in the neck, plenty of rotation. He does get caught on his collar a little bit, but it doesn't have an unrealistic level of articulation to it. It still works for the most part. Universal shoulders that work considerably well. Full-on bicep rotation and a 90-degree elbow, as well as a wrist swivel, and as said, a hinge for 2 sets of fingers. And then we go down to the waist, where we have full articulation. I always appreciate the fact that they have full articulation without that belt getting in the way down here. That's always a nice thing to have. Full ball joints at the hips. Actually, universal joints on this guy. So yeah, that works really well. Plenty of range of motion. Full thigh swivel. We saw a double jointed knee thanks to his transformation. That's actually a little bonus from how these guys usually are. And a ball joint at the ankle. If you've seen these gimmick figures in previous Kamen Rider lines, the articulation is no surprise. This is pretty much the standard fare, and does make them quite articulate toys for the price. So, if in case you don't want to pay out for super detailed figure arts, but you still want a very nice representation of the Kamen Riders of the year, these have never really been a bad option. There have been plenty of them over the years, and I've found fun with most of them. at least as far as being a standard action figure goes. Now, the idea behind this X-Aid is this big shell here, and the reason why the chest piece has to come off rather than just tucking X-Aid way in the back is because buying the Level Up Rider #1 is the only way to get that shell. That shell is also compatible with Brave, Snipe, Laser, and Genom in order to make their Level 1 incarnations. So you can do the same swappable trick with them. And if you want a whole set of Level 1 riders on your shelf, prepare to buy a bunch of X-Aids. At least that gives you plenty of bodies for all the ridiculous armors they come up with. Now, that's one thing, I guess. So that, my friends, is Level Up Rider #1, Kamen Rider X-Aid. If you're just after X-Aid at this point, the figure art is out and does have a much higher level of detail, so I'd begrudgingly decide to recommend that one. Figure arts are more expensive than they used to be, but this guy also comes with a decent price because of that big shell he's included with. It's not bad if you can get it on sale, but if you've got the extra money, the figure art is kind of worth spending out to get the extra detail and the extra paint, especially on things like the weapons. Now, if you'll excuse me, these guys have a trip down the yellow brick road to get to, preferably full of coins and mushrooms.